Yo, yo, YouTube. We're back. UFC 308. Full card prediction video. Starting with the main event. We got Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. And in this one, ultimately, I'm taking Max Holloway to get the job done here with high confidence. Love to say that. I like both fighters. Both super entertaining. Ilia just is on an absolute run in the UFC. He can't be stopped. Just smashed Volkanovski, round 2 knockout. And for Max, he just had one of the best UFC fights in UFC history and put Justin Gaethje out with 1 second left in the fight. No one puts Justin Gaethje out. Max Holloway's boxing is so good. He's just getting into his groove. It feels like he's been around a long time. He's only 32, but his striking so good. And when he gets into a rhythm, nobody can stop him. He's got a certain aura about him. Ego when he's in there as well. For Ilia, his striking looks very good as well. It's a different style striking though. It's more of a rip the body and the head. Max is more of just a head striker. But Ilia's big shots, he's kind of short, stocky. Throws a lot of hooks and even haymakers. Max is more of a crisper boxer, 1, 2, 3s, 2, 3s. He throws 4s and 5s as well. But I really think Max is going to get the job done here as long as he can avoid the first 10 minutes of Ilia. I believe Ilia is very dangerous for the first 10 minutes. And Max will find that groove, that aura about him by the third round where he's dancing, talking his stuff. And he's going to be pumping that jab out there. He's seen plenty of guys with power in his career. He's not getting knocked out by this guy. Volkanovski got knocked out because we kind of knew that was the end of his run. It was father time. Max isn't there yet. He hasn't took too much damage in his career. He's only lost fights by boring decisions. Max doesn't take damage. He gives it. I like him huge here. He's going to avoid those first 10 minutes. He could lose the first and second round or one of those rounds and still dominate the fight. I know when it gets to the third round what will happen. I really mean that. Max Holloway is so different in there. He's really big. His output's crazy. His cardio is just unmatched. And Topuria hasn't really fought super elite strikers lately. He's fought Volkanovski, but I don't count him as super high level striker. Before that, Ilia had Josh Emmett, good striker, heavy hands, but he's not fast. Bryce Mitchell fought Ilia Topuria on bronchitis or something, dude. He was death in there. Like, he's not a striker anyway. Then there was Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert hit this guy with one of the meanest knees ever. Ilia was out of it. Came back a minute later and knocked him out. A lot of credit there. Before that, Ryan Hall, jiu-jitsu player. Like, he's never fought a striker like Max yet. Max is one of a kind, man. He's going to get this kid. Like Max a lot here. Didn't want to talk about this one this long, but let's go Max Holloway. Plus 200. And also by decision. No props out yet, but I think it's a decision if I had to pick money lines to play. On to the next fight. Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker. Ultimately, in this one, I'm taking Khamzat Chimaev here to get the job done with average confidence. I don't want to say too high because if Robbie stuffs every takedown, he'll probably win the fight. But I don't believe that's what will happen here. I believe Chimaev will take advantage of this fight because it's only a 3-round fight. And he knows if he can just win the 2 rounds, blow his whole load of cardio, that he can survive a 3rd round without getting knocked out. This guy's been in dog fights already. Gilbert Burns fight was crazy. His last fight with Usman was insane. Like, he can hang. As long as he wins 2 rounds, he's going to just... He is really good with technical takedowns. He does grappling matches. He did that thing with Hermanson, which was really impressive in the grappling match. Not a UFC fight, but shows you that he's a very high-level grappler. But he's just going to use overpowering takedowns like Dricus Du Plessis did to Rob Whittaker. Just throw him to the ground with every ounce of muscle you have, and he's going to keep him there. I like Chimaev here by decision. Robbie's really tough. I don't think he'll get tapped out. There's a chance it could be a ground and pound. I don't believe so. Robbie is coming off a win over Ikram Iliskerov. Super impressive. Round one, odds were super low. It was in the hundreds somewhere. I forget. I think it was like minus 120 or 150. Really good number, though, against someone with not a lot of UFC experience. Robbie Whittaker is really impressive, but the knockout to Dricus showed me a lot that he can just be ragdolled, and that's what happened. Chimaev has to start fighting more than once a year, man. That's so annoying because he's such a fan favorite. They're going to Dubai, or wherever this fight is, Dubai or Abu Dhabi, that they're just like catering to this guy, it feels like, to get him on the card. Like Topuria and Max Holloway, neither of them are from Abu Dhabi. It don't make sense why it's not in Georgia for Topuria. He's defending the belt. But on to the next fight, we got Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. And ultimately, in this fight, I'm taking Lerone Murphy here to get the job done. Minus 240 favorite. Probably by decision. He had a really good fight night main event with Edson Barbosa. He put it on him. He beat him every single round. He had him hurt almost every single round. Super impressive performance because before that, he was kind of squeaking out wins over guys like Josh Tulabel, kind of dominated. But before that, Gabriel Santos in a split decision. Gabriel Santos is like 1-2 in the UFC, and that was a really close fight. Lerone Murphy fought him on short notice in London. For Dan Ige, super tough. Hands are dynamite. He can knock anyone out. He's coming off a loss to Diego Lopez, which people say he took the fight on hours' notice, but I believe he knew a couple days before the fight that he could get the call. Doesn't matter. He still lost. He lost 2 rounds to Lopez, and in the third round, he did win. Lopez kind of just did what I said Chimaev will do, is Lopez threw the whole gas tank down there the first 10 minutes at Ige, won the first 2 rounds, and then just coasted in the third round. He lost. But Dan Ige did, before Lopez, knocked out Andre Fili in the first round, lost to Bryce Mitchell, grappler, beat Nate Landwehr, beat Damon Jackson. These guys aren't good strikers. Andre Fili's decent, but to lose to Bryce Mitchell is just horrible anymore. Bryce Mitchell's not that guy. Lerone Murphy is not going to be going for takedowns here, though. This fight's going to remain on the feet. I think it's going to be really close. I don't think Lerone Murphy's going to get knocked out by Dan Ige. I think he's too fast, too slick. 14-0-1 versus 18-8. The competition level is very different, but that last performance against Edson Barbosa is pushing me over to pick Lerone Murphy here, minus 240. Next fight, Magomed Ankalev versus Alexander Rakic. And ultimately, in this one, I'm going with Magomed Ankalev here. He's sitting about minus 390 favorite. This guy is a really good fighter. A little bit boring. That's why he's not getting the title shot. Even if he wins this fight, he's not going to get the title shot. His striking is very good. Obviously, the grappling. Once he gets a takedown, it stays there. He's been in the UFC a really long time. He had his title chance against Jan Blachowicz. It went to a draw. Then he fought Johnny Walker a couple times. Knocked him out the midway point of the fight, halfway through the second round. But Alexander Rakic is super tough. He's not Johnny Walker. He'll be able to hang the 3 rounds. He had a really good fight with Yuri Prochazka, his last fight. He did lose, but, man, they were slugging it out. It's one of the best fights I've ever seen in the UFC, I think. Before that, lost to Jan Blachowicz by knockout. Thiago Santos, he beat him. He beat Anthony Smith. Lost to Volkan Ozdemir. I don't like these losses he has. to lose to Volkan Ozdemir is not great to see. Was a split. Jan Blachowicz, though, you got knocked out by him. I don't like that. Magomed Ankalaev just went to a draw with Blachowicz. I don't play the MMA math, but I'm just factoring that in there on this one a little bit. I think Ankalev's going to get a boring decision here. Cage control. He's going to get takedowns. Even if it stays on the feet, I think Ankalaev has a good chance, because the takedown threat that he's going to just basically propose to Rakic the whole time is going to be a lot to deal with. I like Ankalaev here with average confidence, minus 390. This next one, though, I really like a lot, is Shara Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. And in this one, I'm actually going underdog here. I'm going Armen Petrosyan. What is he? 1 second here. Plus 150 favorite. I like Armen a lot. He's super tough. He only loses to grapplers. His last 2 losses came to Caio Baralho and... let's see. Who was that other black belt in jiu-jitsu? Oh, yeah, Rodolfo Vieira. Those aren't bad losses to have. Those guys are super high-level jiu-jitsu players. He beats all the strikers they put in front of him. Christian Leroy Duncan, Gregory Rodriguez, Robocop, AJ Dobson. Like, Armen Petrosyan is so tough on the feet. His striking's really good. I like him against a lot of strikers. He's really big for 185. Shara Magomedov, on the other hand, I'm such a fan of him. I want him to do good because his Muay Thai is super good. His striking's really exciting, but his volume's really low. Last win over Michel Oleksiejczuk, 3-round decision. Kind of not impressed there. It was a very boring fight. Before that, he fought Antonio Tricoli. Knocked him out in the 3rd round, really late in the fight. But that fight was boring. The volume was so low. He's just barely winning rounds against Tricoli, who took the fight on just days' notice. And before that, his UFC debut, he fought Brunno Silva. That was another decision. It was kind of impressive, kind of not. He got taken down a couple times in that fight. And not that Petrosyan is that style fighter. He is more of a kickboxer primarily, but he can definitely land a few takedowns. His volume's so high. Magomedov's so low. I believe he's really beat all the better guys. The decisions for Magomedov aren't doing it for me. The one against Tricoli, he only knocked Tricoli out because he took the fight on days' notice. He was gassed. It's not that he was hurting him. He was literally just completely out of oxygen. I like Petrosyan here, plus 150 with average confidence. He won't make it a boring fight. He's going to grind on Magomedov and I believe take him down, win this fight by decision. These are such good fights, though. It's so good to talk about fights when the level of competition is a lot higher. Talking about some of these fight nights sometimes is just tough because you have to do so much research on who these guys are. There's so many newcomers and a lot of guys you just don't remember because you only seen them fight once. But with this card, it's a lot of guys that I've been seeing fight for years. I don't miss any weekends off of UFC. I watch all these guys. I'm really familiar with a lot of them. There's a couple towards the end that we weren't so familiar with that I definitely looked into. But about 85% of this card is a lot of fights that I didn't have to rewatch because I just remember the fights in my head so good. But in this next fight, we got Geoff Neal and Rafael dos Anjos. Geoff Neal is a 3-1 favorite over RDA. With all due respect to RDA, I think that's a good line. I really like Geoff Neal here in this spot. High confidence. The day of the fight, RDA will turn 40. I don't like taking guys that are 40 years old in this sport. This sport is a young man's game. You don't see success at a lot of guys over 35, unless they're in the heavyweight division. And for Geoff Neal, he lost his last 2 fights, but, I mean, one of them was over Ian Gary, who is a dynamic striker, really good fighter. Not that I'm a fan of Ian Gary. I don't like him at all. No one's a fan of Ian Gary. Before that, he did lose to Shavkat Rakhmonov, got choked out in the 3rd round. That was another impressive fight, though. They scrapped it out pretty good for 3 rounds. Before that, he fought Vicente Luque, knocked him out, won a split decision over Santiago Ponzinibbio. And for RDA, I believe he did win his last fight. Let me see. No, he lost to Matusz Gamrot. That's right. That was a real bad mismatch for him. Too young. That's what I'm seeing here. These younger fighters are going to have advantage over RDA. He's too old, 40 years old, 32 and 16. He's been in the UFC too long. It's probably his retirement fight. He's just not saying it. Last loss to Matusz Gamrot, lost to Vicente Luque, beat Brian Barberena, which everyone does. Lost to Rafael Fiziev, beat Renato Moicano. Super impressive win there. It's a really good win to have on his resume, actually. You know, Moicano could be fighting for the title really soon. RDA beat Moicano because it was more of a grappling fight. He beat Barberena. He took him down. A lot of his fights been taking place on the floor. Geoff Neal's takedown defense percentage is super high. I believe it sits in the 90s. Hands of steel Neal I see here getting the job done. I could actually see a knockout here, but probably a 3-round decision by Geoff Neal. I don't believe he'll lose a round. If he gets taken down, he'll pop right back up. RDA's too old. But in this next fight, we have Matusz Rebecki versus Myktybek Orolbai. And in this fight, I like Myktybek Orolbai here to get the job done. Probably by decision. I don't see a lot of knockouts on this. For Orolbai, though, he's coming off a super impressive win over Elvis Brenner, Uros Medic. Those guys are really good fighters in the UFC. There's only 2 UFC fights. I'm only going off their latest performances because I don't care what you've done 3 or 4 years ago. I need to see what you're doing for me now. And for Matusz Rebecki, he lost his last fight. He gassed out. He got knocked out by Diego Ferreira. I don't like that because Diego's not super high level, but I shouldn't say that at any of these guys. Obviously, all these guys are high level to make it to the UFC. I mean more of the point where Diego's at in his career, coming to the end, and then he got a knockout win over Rebecki. But Rebecki is impressive. He has a win over Roosevelt Roberts, Louis Krastabov, a couple other guys that aren't high level at all. But I think Orolbai here is going to be the better striker. These guys are both kind of grapplers, and I think it'll cancel each other out. I don't see Orolbai laying on his back. He's way too good for that. And for Rebecki, we know he's going to run out of gas again probably. He's super chiseled to be fighting at 155 pounds. He's way too heavy looking, dude. He looks like 185 in there on fight night. Orolbai's really big as well, but he's young. I think he's going to get the job done here with canceling the grappling out and landing the better shots on the feet. In this next fight, we have Said Nurmagomedov versus Daniel Santos. And in this one, I'm taking Said Nurmagomedov here with super high confidence. Lock of the night. This guy is nasty with submissions, striking. Everything's so good about him. There's nothing not to like. Last win over Muin Gafarov. Super impressive round 1 submission. Put him in a guillotine when he went for a takedown. Before that, he did lose to Jonathan Martinez. Don't like to see that, but John Martinez is top 15, top 10 in the UFC, so it's not a super bad loss to have. It could have been a humbling loss. But even before that, he beat Cody Stamann, De Silva Andrade. And for Daniel Santos, let's see what his last fight was. Said is a 3-1 favorite here. He's sitting about minus 290 right now. Daniel Santos, recent win over Johnny Munoz. I don't believe he's in the promotion anymore. John Castaneda knocked him out. That's a really good win to have, actually. John Castaneda's good. But before that, he lost to Julio Arce. Daniel Santos is a really good striker here. He's out of that shoot-the-box gym, which means they're tough. But I think he's going to think that he can't get tapped out here by Saeed. He's going to believe that his jiu-jitsu is better than Saeed Nurmagomedov's Dagestanian wrestling. And I think he's going to be overconfident and shooting for takedowns. And Saeed's going to take that neck home. Lock of the night. In this next fight, we have Abus Magomedov versus Brunno Ferreira. In this fight, I'm taking Abus Magomedov here with high confidence, actually. He's a really good fighter. He lost to Sean Strickland, but after that, he got another bad matchup with Caio Borralho. He did just win his last fight over Warley Alves. And for Brunno Ferreira, he got knocked out a couple fights ago by who I can call Philly's own Ruzaboev. Nursultan Ruzaboev knocked out Brunno Ferreira. He was like a plus 200 favorite. After that, Brunno Ferreira has bounced back with 2 knockout wins in the first round over Phil Hawes and Dustin Stoltzfus. Super impressive striker. His background's actually judo, but we're fighting a Magomedov here. These Magomedovs, when you see that OV, you don't want to grapple these guys. Abus Magomedov, super impressive, actually, in my opinion. I think he's going to steamroll Ferreira here. Once he makes it out of that first round, he'll be very safe. He beat the heck out of Sean Strickland in the first round and gassed himself. Got knocked out in the second round by Strickland, who winded up becoming the champion, or was just the champion before that. But Caio Borralho loss was tough. He got out-grappled by a black belt. And then after that, he put the grappling on Warley Alves. And I like to see that going into this fight. He went back to his roots to get the win. And I think he's going to have to do that here against Brunno Ferreira. This could be a really even striking match. He's definitely the bigger fighter, longer reach. 6'2 to 5'10, 78 to 72 in the reach. I think Abus can win this fight striking or in grappling, and that's why I have him to win this fight. He's more of a complete fighter than Brunno Ferreira, who was more just a big-time striker, in my opinion. The judo means nothing because he doesn't use it. In this next fight, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. And Chris Barnett is taking this fight, I don't want to call it short notice because he was in a camp to fight last weekend. His house in Florida was flooded, so he couldn't fight last weekend. And here he is flying over to Abu Dhabi a week later to fight Kennedy Nzechukwu. Kennedy Nzechukwu is 6'5". Chris Barnett is 5'9". And Kennedy is a really nasty striker. He has a lot of power. Chris Barnett just seems so desperate for a check here that he flew to Abu Dhabi on a week notice. I'm not talking about this fight for a long time because that's really all I need to say. You can't go to Abu Dhabi in a week and fight. You can't even become accustomed to the sleeping difference out there. The timing's so off. They're like 7 or 8 hours difference. Like, Chris Barnett is going for a check. This is Kennedy's fight. It could be decision, could be knockout. He's like a 600 favorite here, like Kennedy. In this next fight, we have Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. And Farid Basharat has been so impressive lately. All aspects of his game are clean. Striking, grappling. Recent win over Taylor Lapulus. That little Rodriguez kid with the blue hair. It was probably not a promotion anymore. But another win over Damon Blackshear. I like that a lot. Minus 700 favorite here, which is a pretty accurate line. It's really hard to say how he's going to win. He usually wins by decision. This is a fight where he could finally get a finish, though. I think a submission. Victor Hugo has not been impressive. 25-4, very good record, but a lot of it's outside the UFC. He has one fight in the UFC, and it's a win, unanimous decision. Sometimes you trust the O. When you see minus 700, trust that O. Farid Basharat here. All aspects of the game are better. Super high confidence. In these last couple fights here, we are going with Ismail Naurdiev versus Brunno Silva. Brunno Silva has a lot of UFC experience. He's 1-4 in his last 5. I don't like that. I don't like the way he's been looking in his last few fights. If you lose to Chris Weidman, that's kind of enough for me. Chris Weidman's been out of it for a while. For Ismail Naurdiev, on the other hand, he's nothing to butter up either. He won his last fight. Before that, he got finished in 2. He was in the UFC many years ago. He actually fought Sean Brady and lasted for 3 rounds, but that was before Sean Brady was who he is now, which is super impressive. Sean Brady would probably get this guy out of there in a round now. But in this fight, I'm taking Ismail Naurdiev. He's a younger fighter. I think the second UFC motivation is going to be there. Brunno Silva 1-4 in his last 5. This is probably his last fight. 23-12. That's not a record you can keep really continuing to stay with the UFC with. He might get other fights, wind up PFL, Bellator. It might be really good over there. This is a very low confidence pick in Ismail Naurdiev here. I think he's going to get that second motivation for the UFC. He's young. He might still have a chance. I like Ismail here. -140. In this next fight, we have Rene Facardina versus Carlos Leal. This is put together real last minute. Renat Facardina was supposed to fight Philly's own Nursultan Rozaboev. He fell out of the fight. That's disappointing. But Carlos Leal is a good fighter. He has PFL wins, Bellator wins, over really good fighters too. He lost to Sada Boussy a couple times, but that guy's super high level for PFL even. I don't know why he's not in the UFC. He's got to get over here. He even beat guys, the Danilo guy that used to be in the UFC. For Renat Facardina, he's coming off a super lucky win over Nick Dalby. He should have lost that fight. Renat's pressure is crazy. He's 22, 1-1. His grappling's probably going to get the job done here. I got Renat Facardina off here to get the job done. Probably by a decision as well, or submission. But I would lean decision. And in the curtain jerk of the night, we have Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueiro. And in this one, I'm taking Ibo Aslan with super low confidence. He is not the best fighter, but I did see him go like 12 or 13 minutes in his last fight in the UFC against Anton Turkalj, which isn't a good fighter, but is a dog. Anton was bringing it. It was a really good fight until it ended. A lot of finishes before that outside the UFC. And for Rafael, he's been impressive, but he's been fighting taxi drivers. Not that Ibo Aslan is not fighting taxi drivers as well. Both these guys are fighting guys with losing records, 0-1 records before the UFC, which was just a year or two ago. But Ibo Aslan, I know more about. I seen him go for over 2 rounds in the UFC against a tough guy. I'm leaning Ibo Aslan here to get the job done. He has good grappling and striking. And Rafael is Brazilian. He doesn't have an impressive jiu-jitsu game, but he has takedowns and striking. Really hard fight to call. I like Ibo Aslan to start the night. -125. And that's going to wrap the night up for UFC 308. But drop a comment if anyone wants to talk about any fights. Share with a friend. Anything like that is much appreciated. I'm really looking forward to this card. It's really early in the morning. 10 a.m. Eastern time is the start of the prelims over here for me. 2 p.m. Eastern time for the main card. I'm really excited. I don't like staying up late for fights, so this is awesome for me. I really like Max a lot. I like Said Nurmogomedov a lot. I like Geoff Neal a ton. I think there's really good picks on this card. Good luck, y'all. Until next time.